stood at the foot of a great high mountain that I wanted so much to climb. And on top of this mountain was a beautiful fountain, and beside it the tree of life. I fell down on my knees at the foot of this mountain, cried out, Odin, what must I do? I want to climb up and see, want to learn from this tree that grows so clear in my view. From the top of this mountain, saying, child, these are my rules. Just start with Fehu and climb on upward between the etheric and rude. Climbing upwards, taking Odin's advice, and the higher I got, the harder I climbed. Climbing upwards, and the journey never ends, but through symbiosis I farm and live free, climbing higher each day by the alchemist way. So friend, if you're willing, climb this mountain with me. Oh, cuckoo, she's a pretty bird. She warbles as she flies. She never hollers cuckoo till 4th day July. Gonna build me a log cabin on a mountain so high, so I can see Willie as he goes on by. I play cards in England, and I play cards in Spain. I'll bet you $10 I'll beat you this game. step aside. Little woman, my horses won't stand. Jack and Jack and I've known you from old. You robbed my poor pockets of my silver and my gold. Oh, the cuckoo, she's a pretty bird. She warbles as she flies. She'll cause you no trouble, and she'll tell you no lies.
Hey, welcome to Odin's Alchemy. This week we have the great pleasure of welcoming back Rachel Maiden, our newly married good friend Rachel, with one of our other favorite people on the planet, Jim. How's married life treating you, Rachel?
It's married life. No, we're having all the fun.
You look less worn out than you did last time. Poor Rachel. That's why part of why Rachel's been kind of gone. You know that she got some extra work on top of the normal new things of getting married and moving halfway across the country and all that other good stuff. So you look a lot more well rested, more chipper.
Thank you.
You betcha. Very nice. Very nice. Been an interesting couple weeks in the world. I don't know if you've saw the rash of alien ships being shot down.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
All the alien spy balloons. Yeah.
Well, supposedly these are they're calling them UFOs. You know, they're one's a hexagon, and that one took 2 missiles to shoot down. That's
interesting.
Yeah. So it's been, and then all the three train derailments.
Mm-hmm.
Each one supposedly carrying toxic chemicals.
I just heard about the one in Ohio that happened in the same place that they shot a movie about the exact same thing happening.
Yeah. In 2022, so it's not like this was a 1950s, just like last year.
Yeah. So
and the authorities decided to blow it up to clear the railway. This train full of toxic chemicals. Like it could be the worst decision ever in the history of decisions. And they just openly, yeah, we thought we'd just blow it up. No excavators or cranes were available. Those type of machineries are not around. So they decided toxic chemicals, we shall just blow it up. It's
seems like a good plan, clean, right?
Yeah, environmentally friendly.
Oh yeah, I'm sure everyone around the area appreciates it very much.
Yeah, they're already talking about real bad fallout. They're saying this is like basically Chernobyl. They're saying that it's just a chemical fallout. Like, what the hell? And then you find out the other two trains supposedly also were carrying toxic chemicals. All
right.
This isn't just complete BS at all. The world has been a stage, and I mean the last so many years here. It's not that it's just started happening; it just became very apparent. Like it's like the fifth season in a TV series where it's not like that first season where it was really well done and cool. It's like that whole Game of Thrones meme where like the back end is like a perfect horse, and by the front end it looks like a mentally challenged 3-year-old druid.
Oh man,
that's yeah. Like in the perfect end, season 1, and the mentally challenged part is season however many seasons that went. But it feels like we're in season 8 or whatever that is. Like we're in the part where they aren't even. You're just like, wow. Really?
We might be in Lost. Maybe this is all really just some weird time traveling game, and it won't make sense until ever.
Until you take enough drugs. That's why it's the ones strung out on drugs that are actually with it at this point. They're like, this all makes perfect sense.
I see it.
Yeah. The world finally got normal.
It's about time.
Oh man, yeah. So it's quite an interesting time to be alive. It sure is, without a doubt.
Oh yeah.
And with that, we are going to finish off the Havamal portion of the poetic edit today. It's only taken us the better part of a year or so.
Yeah, this is. If you were to read this on your own, it would definitely not take that long.
No, it's a fairly, if you just get just the Havamal, it's a fairly. Here's the entirety of it right here, like just the Havamal. It's a fairly short, simple book. They actually give it out in the military. I've got one somewhere, or I might have loaned it out to somebody, but just the Havamal itself, and it's just like a little pamphlet, almost looks like what the Jehovah's hand out or something like that. Like, have you heard from Odin?
Really?
Yeah, it's just like this little pamphlet thing.
No.
Yeah, it's great. It's a fine beard. Have you met the All-Father? You tired of weak, unaccountable Christian gods? Is Abrahamic the only possible way?
I would love to get a hold of some heathen tracts.
So when my grandsons were here, that was a challenge. so what I ended up doing is because there really isn't a whole lot of material, but there are a few smaller companies that put together on YouTube. You can find them a series of children's stories that are just a cartoon animation version of and obviously they're cleaned up a little bit, but an animation version of the stories from the Eddas and whatnot, and really cool. So I just hooked that up to the regular TV, like, for the like quiet time when they were just sitting there, when Christy's trying to cook or whatever. And so I played that through the YouTube because there's really nothing commercially available. I got that Avatar, The Last Airbender. That's pretty awesome, but it's still not this culture. But there are some series for kids on YouTube that aren't horrible. I can actually still hear the one fucking in my head. They had a whole song about Loki. It was so annoying.
Like, what have I done to myself?
Yeah, you're like, it's like the heathen version of Baby Shark or whatever. You're like, fuck. Why?
It'll be in my head forever now.
Yes. Oh man, hilarious.
We should definitely link those.
But yeah, Yeah, Jared, could you possibly look that up and link those? They're YouTube and a heathen cartoon for anybody that's possibly interested in that, because obviously one of the things that I've been in an actual in-person thing that I've been dealing with some of my people that I know is where it's very typical for in our culture today, for whatever reason, for the man to be a heathen, and then his chosen partner to be a Christian. And this is really hard for people because literally there's a reason that Hitler said, give them to me before whatever age it was, and they'll be mine. If you are letting your child be programmed with Abrahamic programming, even if they deviate for a little while, there's a reason that there's the whole saying about them coming back to what they were rooted in, and that is their roots. And I don't think that this is something that nearly enough is pushed in the community, where it's extremely important, if we're going to pass these understandings on, that Rachel doesn't get arrested. That if we're going to pass these if we're going to pass these understandings on and truly have people that embody them and start turning it into a culture, that's something that can be built on, and we end up having generational things, that needs to start by teaching your kids when they start, and there needs to not be confusion on that. You need to, if you're a heathen, stand on this. And there seems to be just a real problem with where heathens have married into Abrahamic, and the Abrahamic wins that fight with the kids every time. Like ours is the good, nice way, you dirty fucking heathen. Like, are you kidding me? And so I do go out of my way. My oldest grandson, I got him some books. And there are some good books, but I'm privileged that he's one of the ones that enjoys reading, enjoys learning. And no matter what people tell you, I mean, God, kids are so crazy. Like, everybody tells you, if you want your kids to do something, or that's what they said when I was a kid, if you want your kids to do something, you need to do it, because they'll do what you do, not what you say. And I read like mad. And I read so much more when my kids were young, because you're stuck home. You can't, have a life. You've got, your life revolves around your kids more. And I was reading constantly. None of my kids read. None of them. Couldn't care less about it. Now my kids don't read at all, and my grandson loves reading. So I don't even know how to explain all that. But with reading, we will go ahead and finish the Havamal. And with that, I think we were on 138.
Yeah, it's the last stretch. So 138. Yeah. I know, I'm like, what? We can make it. I know that I hung on a wind-battered tree 9 long nights, pierced by a
I don't know
spear
if we
and
can
given
make
to
it.
Odin. Well, we'll find out.
This is not the place to start for a short discussion.
I know. Like this is what so many people will know out of the Havamal is this last stretch. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, pierced by a spear and given to Odin, myself to myself on that tree, whose roots grow in a place no one has ever seen. Okay. No one gave me food, no one gave me drink. At the end, I peered down, I took the runes, screaming I took them, and then I fell. I learned 9 spells from the famous son of Boltor, the father of Beskla, and I won a drink of that precious mead, poured from Othrarir. I began to be fruitful, I became wise. I grew and I thrived. One word chased another word flowing from my mouth. One deed chased another deed flowing from my hands. You will find runes, runic letters to read, very great runes, very powerful runes, which Odin painted, and which the holy gods made, and which Odin carved. Odin carved for the gods, and Dane for the elves, Dvalin for the dwarves, and Asfid for the giants. I carved some myself.
I wot that I hung on the wind-tossed tree of all the nights 9, wounded by spear, bespoken to Odin, bespoken myself to myself. Upon that tree, of which none telleth from what roots it doth rise. Neither horn they upheld, nor handed me bread. I looked below me, aloud I cried, caught up the runes, caught them up wailing, thence to the ground fell again. From the son of Bolthorn, Bestless father, I mastered mighty songs 9, and a drink I had of the dearest mead, got from out of Othrarir. So obviously this portion then is the portion of the story where Odin is gaining the runes.
Pierced by a spear.
That's always been the most interesting part of it for me. I mean, in the first part, I would say that he's a lot of pictures, modern pictures. He's depicted hung like by his neck, but I would state that he's hung in the hanged man position where he's hung upside down. Obviously, if he's hung by the neck, how's exactly is he reaching down to grab the runes? Like that's a pretty interesting feat when you're hung by the neck. So even in just thinking about how the mechanics of what's happening goes on, lends one to the idea that he's most likely hung upside down in this scenario, not hung from the neck.
That does make a lot more sense.
Yeah. So that's what I would really throw down. And then obviously the 9 nights. Now a lot of people try to liken this to the crucifixion of Christ, where that's specifically then 3 days. I don't know if then I'm not sure. Do you know how many days supposedly he does his little walk where they beat him up and treat him like shit and all that?
I don't know that it says any amount. I'm just under the impression it was over the course of 1 day. It's like, that's
So
at least that's how it's always depicted. It doesn't ever seem like it went on for days. It's like, oh, the hill that we're going to kill you on is just right over there.
Right.
So
right. So I don't see where you could necessarily tie them together. In heathen cosmology, 9 is a very sacred number. In most instances, 8 and 9 are the equivalent, because when you have the 9 realms, but there's 8 paths to the 9 realms, because from Midgard, you're standing there and there'd be 8 paths around you, but it'd be 9 realms total. You are one of the 9. You are the 1 or the 9, or whichever way you want to look at that. Wounded by spear. Again, that's also similar to the crucifixion trope. And one that I've put a substantial amount of thought into and don't even know that I could necessarily take any kind of a favored position on. It seems like it's pretty much always depicted on the right side in the kidney area. Like just under the ribs, maybe, is what it looks like. Like maybe you're going into the kidney area.
Yeah, that would almost seem like it would have to come from above if it was going to be, or like straight on.
Yeah, usually like when you're boxing, if you punch them in the back, it's like right at the lower end of the rib cage from the back. My other thought is like, but see, the liver's a little bit lower. So that was really my very first thought, but that doesn't really seem to like you would. And why would it be from the side then? Because the liver's in a lot of older cultures, the seat of the soul. And so maybe it was, my thought process on that, maybe that was like trying to unseat the soul. And, you're trying to create this disturbance. But I don't know that matches any of the depictions, or if the depictions are even accurate to what the story is in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Yeah, because for it to be depicted on the side does draw a parallel to Christ, which is the oldest trick in the book. Oh, look, we do that too. I would think it would be somewhere else. I almost want to say the stomach is more likely if you're hanging, because you're going to probably spill somebody's entrails, which, seems like it was a thing back in medieval days.
Yeah. The disembowelment.
Yeah. And that's your will, right? That's the center for will.
Right. The solar plexus. See, that one's made sense to me also. Because the free will has an insane strength to it. And when you look at, that's a talk that I've been kind of putting together, because there's just a lack of understanding with like your etheric beings. The whole reason angels don't have free will is because when you look at the tree of life, like my tree of life, the heart chakra is basically the earth underneath our feet. That's Midgard. And so angels exist here. Everything above, they're etheric. And your will is right here. This is below. So they don't have that, dense body. They don't have that will center. And so that's when they're explaining that is them not having will. They don't. They come from up here where there isn't will. Will's right here.
Yeah, and that's not a negative thing. It's not a slam. It's more like that's
No.
just the mechanics of it. And
Right.
I would think, there's purpose in that. That's you need entities like that who must
Yeah.
function the way that they function that exact way for however long they do, because it's just how the machine works.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point. It does exist above.
Yep. And then, with some beings, they don't actually have free will, so that's just kind of a different thing entirely.
Yeah.
Because they don't have that higher thought, so that higher thought matched to the lower end is what creates the free part of the free will, because they don't even have higher thought in order to understand something that's not something they've already experienced. They don't have new thoughts because they don't have higher thought, because they exist down here. And so while they have vast wisdom because they've seen a lot, they don't have the freedom of trying something different, of forcing something that's never been. And again, it's just an understanding of the mechanics, and it's also an understanding of the beauty of us as people, where we do have both. And so to me, that was what was going on. If you're talking about this being the great work includes decoupling this higher side and this lower side, where we're a mix of both, and we decouple it and then purify both sides and push it back together as one. So it's not this dirty, quote unquote, dirty connection where, it just means it has ohms. It's a more pure connection, like a superconductor matched with your pure power source. So it's simultaneously at the same time. It doesn't have the flow that needs to happen, which is time. Time obviously only needs to exist for those of us that have ohms. And in the superconductor land, things on this end and on this end exist at the exact same time because of the way the superconductivity works. Well, that's what we believe is happening in this process that we're talking about right here. So that decoupling would be the first thing that needs to happen. So the solar plexus does make a lot of sense to me. And like Rachel said, all the depictions that we do have are post-Christianization. So that could very well be why none of the pictures match that, if that's what's going on.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. Maybe this is something we can get into a little later, but there are instances where, people attempt, well, there's a story in here at least about some guys on a ship, kind of similar to a Jonah situation, where it's a terrible time and they're like, somebody's going to have to be Odin right now and be a sacrifice. And so they often put that same person into this same position, and that person acts as an oracle, or something happens, if that makes sense. But yeah, that would be something to think about. The symbolism that I've seen is with the spear, because spears represent far sight and the mind being very quick, but it is far reaching. It's not just like, oh, a thought here, a thought there. I mean, think about Odin. He didn't ask the vulva for tomorrow's forecast. He's asking for Ragnarok. He's asking for his fate far down the road. Every action that he's taken, in binding Fenrir, things like that are based on far thinking. So to be pierced on the tree by a spear, you're the thorn in your side. The thing that's hurting you is your own farsightedness. His own sight is what's killing him. When he's a sacrifice to himself, that's what he used to kill himself, was his own farsight. So it could be absolutely literal, and it could also be very symbolic.
And I will put in to back up what Rachel's saying, that Odin's spear never missed. That was one of the things that was most well known about it. neither is he. The second verse in this just goes on to state he didn't have bread nor mead, so he was in a state of extreme fasting. The food part is not that horrible to go without. I've talked about this before, but to go without water or drink for that many days, that's another story entirely. You are definitely having hallucinations. You're definitely not quite in your normal mind. Literally, you're going to be horrifyingly dehydrated. So the electrical signals, which require that hydrogen to transfer, are not going to transfer right or the same way. It's good. You are going to function no different than your phone right before it dies. When you like hit a button and then some other letter pops up on the screen that was nowhere near where your finger did, you're like, what? It just starts pulling up apps that you didn't try and pull up, or it won't pull up the one you want. And like, that's literally your brain.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you imagine, the neurological center just going crazy. It's like pulling all the files out. Like, oh my God, where am I sending energy? It's everybody's getting it, or everybody's not getting it. Just pandemonium.
Yeah, all bad. So that's a crazy thing right there. But you see that in a number of traditions, whether it be the wind talker in your Lakota tradition, where these people literally go through a fast and they put themselves through such their pain tradition is they take an eagle claw and stick it through their chest on each side, and then that's tied off to a pole, and they have to back up and they have to rip the eagle claw out of their chest with their hands down. So just by the pressure of them pulling backwards, and they keep doing it. And like I didn't personally see. I'm friends with a few of these people. I'm from South Dakota, and like I didn't personally see it, but my one friend that has been doing that for years and years. He talks about one year this young kid with some real nice supple skin tried doing it, and he said that kid's skin was like out to like here, and it wouldn't tear out. His skin just kept tearing. He said this poor kid, I mean, just amazing. And it's a well-known thing that the Lakota and the Dakota Nation, they have a real problem with alcoholism. These people, they don't drink at all. They don't do drugs. They don't do any of that. They're extremely spiritual people. So, I mean, these pain type rituals like that included in that. And then you even think about like the sweats where you're sitting in there in extreme heat for a long time. You are definitely going to start having, a little bit of dehydration, some hallucinations. We're going to throw in some pain. So like this is a cocktail of elements that seems to be in so many traditions for this very spiritual portion of a journey.
Yeah, I haven't really done too many of those. I mean, you could say, for me, it probably is tattoos would be that for me. But, it's not just like willy-nilly. Like this was the most meditative thing I've ever done in my life, was to not completely freak out while getting your hands scraped for, I don't know how long.
It's horrible. I only got one,
feeling.
And it's in between. I got one, and it actually goes between my fingers even, and that was horrible.
It's a thing. So, and it's interesting because there are people. I just saw this online where you can get a cream so that it's painless, and I'm like, I think you're missing the point. Now you have
Yep.
de-ritualized this ritual completely. Now you are just a walking billboard that looks like garbage. Because you can tell, you can sense it when somebody has sacred art and when somebody has aesthetic art. And no offense to anyone who just gets things for fun and for beautiful or whatever it is. That's fine. That's your choice. But I have
Flash
seen
art.
things that's and you know that there's nothing, and if you're removing the pain aspect, then you're not learning the lessons, you're not solidifying that moment in time, because that's what happens, and you're not ever, I don't know, it's not the same. It would be as if someone had taken the Lakota, something like that, and was like, oh,
Yeah,
you can do the ritual, it won't hurt.
exactly.
No.
Exactly. If they had taken a whole bunch of Dilaudid or something that would completely disembody the pain and then went and did it, absolutely. It completely takes everything out of it. That pain is literally, as we can see through this ritual here that we're talking about. I mean, I looked below me aloud, I cried, caught up the runes, caught them up wailing. Wailing. He is not happy. This is the All-Father. This is the person who, to gain knowledge the knowledge he did not have at the sacrifice moment, suppose, if we're taking this in the physical sense, plucked out his eye. Blip. Like, oh, that's it. So I mean, this is not some weakling. This is this is a beast of a man, a beast of a god, and this test had him wailing.
Yeah, that's some primal screaming. You're in your body.
Yeah.
I fell, and then I fell. I took them. I reached for them. That's tactile. That is, you are in your body. You are in the root. You are going down deep. And I mean, that's what happens when you see the ultimate truth and the ultimate wisdom. I mean, I peered down and I took the runes. You saw them. I mean, I kind of think it would have to be a deep seeing, all these like DMT trips that people talk about. You would have that flash. You would understand the rune and exactly what it means, and everything. All your emotions are gonna, go through. Like, oh my God, this is amazing. Oh my God, this is horrible. Oh my God, like you're gonna experience all of it. You're gonna love it. You're gonna hate it. It's everything all at once. And the only thing to do would be to go into the dense place, to go into the earth, and to go into the dark and the deep, where there's nothing and everything all at once, to be in Ganungagap.
Right. See, again, this is part of what makes me feel like he was hanging upside down by his ankles, not by his neck. And all rune magic, if you're gonna carve the runes to do something, it's supposed to be in the roots of the tree, and specifically in a tree root, not in the upper pieces, in the tree root. I'm not sure why there's so much even lore today where it's the like, even you see some people that you can only cut runes in the tree, in the branches of a fruit tree, and they've got all this, but in the lore itself, it's always in the root, and in the root of a tree. And so this again paints me to that. While you were talking about that, it struck me I've never quite been able to put my finger on it. I've always kind of looked at the psychedelic experience almost as like a sneak peek, but I've never particularly considered it as sacred as what most people do. Like you never hear me talk about, I'm going to go on a ayahuasca trip, or I'm going to go on a ceremony. I've tried them, but, you know, and I find it very interesting, but you don't hear me talk about how highly spiritual all that is. So when you look at what the All-Father is going through right here, he is highly dehydrated. He is starved. He is in horrifying pain. All these things. And it's the ayahuasca that you mentioned that made me think of this, because naturally your body will start, or naturally your body releases quite a bit of DMT. And the whole reason that you don't walk around in a consistent DMT trip is that you also have an inhibitor that keeps that DMT from necessarily being active. And yeah, when you go and purchase DMT, there is a plant that has a heavy dose of DMT in that. Really, depending on the situation and what's going on with your body, you could literally take the inhibitor and start having a DMT trip. By adding the DMT itself, literally all you're really just making sure there's enough of it floating free in your system to get you where you need to be. The inhibitor is what's really doing the job for you. Because otherwise your body has a thing that makes it so DMT doesn't become psychoactive. Well, in emergency situations, your body overrides that whole system. And this is where they say you have this entire flash of your entire life in a near-death scenario, things like that. They say it's because you get a heavy overload of DMT. Or they even say that the bush that Moses was supposedly talking to, the burning bush, was a DMT trip. And that those bushes were DMT laden, you know, an inhibitor laden, and that supposedly that's all been found in that area around this mountain or whatever. So we're talking a DMT trip, but in this instance, through what's happened to his body, the trip is natural. So the activation components are going to be from inside of you. If you take this in a drug form, the salts and the things that you're opening up are from that plant, not from inside of you naturally, which I think is why it's like with the wind talkers, why they it's so important to not have drugs in their system, to be completely sober, to do this of sound mind, and then through the ritual of what you're doing to put yourself in this altered state that is very similar to a psychedelic state, but again, from your own natural inside. So the understandings you're going to open up are from inside.
Yeah, that's a big deal. That's an important point, because a lot of people, I have not done a lot of work with certain plant dietas, but there are people who do work with plant dietas, and that is exactly what you're experiencing. If you choose to have a spiritual experience on a substance, you're experiencing a very specific, I don't want to say code, but you know,
energy.
You are an energy, a lifeline, a root. You're experiencing a very specific root on the fractal tree.
Yep.
And that can be great. I personally probably would prefer not to do anything that doesn't fall in line with my own ancestral roots. So there are certain things that I probably am not that interested in, unless it's somewhere down there, or unless there's a really big reason I need to experience it. I just don't need to do that. Because what that's going to do is it might open me up to other perspectives, which is always beautiful and good. But you have to understand that it can really just not be for you. You're going to be on a path where you're going to start appropriating cultures that are not yours. And that's a very real thing. It's appropriate for you to appropriate your own culture. and to understand what that culture is, and it's okay to celebrate it. And again, it's all right to experience others, but other bloodlines. I think bloodlines would be a better way to put it. It's okay to experience those things and see the truth in them, but just be aware that that's the truth that may or may not be your truth, and how important that distinction is. I don't know. It just seems there's something to be said for getting to that natural root of yourself.
That's why I'm against universalists. I'm not necessarily I'm not necessarily completely folkish, but universalists, you guys are not very bright. Like, I can't get down with what you're doing at all. Like, I agree with some of the things that you're saying are wrong with some of the folkish folks. Some of them, not all, some. But you guys' ideas are just going to turn everything bad. Yeah. Now, so he has received the runes up in these first two. Now, from the son of Bolthorn, and here I have in Gilfagening, we learn that the giant Bolthorn had a daughter, Besla, who by Bur becomes the mother of Odin, Vili, and Ve. It has been conjectured that the wise Mimir is this giant's son. Thus, Odin's wisdom is derived from three sources: from his self-sacrifice, from Mimir's well, and from a drink out of Otharir. So from Besla's father, basically his grandfather, I mastered Mighty Songs 9 and had a drink I had of the dearest mead got out of Otharir. Now, how this situation, and you never really hear anybody talk about this, how this came about, I'm not 100% how this came about. I'm not 100% sure. Like, now that he's fallen out of the tree, like, there's just like a prize horn and some mead sitting there, that's like it, a lot of detail missing here.
Yeah, it does jump. I suppose it would be like just walking into the other side. Well, kind of, yeah. Because this stuff's just here.
Yeah. Like,
or maybe
where was this when I was hanging there for 9 days? I could have used a drink. Just saying.
I feel like this is part of the internal journey,
Right.
Because if this is a giant, then this is almost, backwards in time, right? Or, I mean, giants still existed then. So, it's part of the internal.
So, his grandfather, who one would assume was dead. You don't really hear too much about him in any other way, shape, or form. And then upon the slaying of Ymir, his name isn't one of there was 2 giants that survived, and that name isn't one of them. But I've always speculated that Buri survives and that he's actually from the because the Lord of the Rings series is based off heathen cosmology, and Tom Bombadil, I've always speculated was Buri. Existed before the world, because Odin, Vili, and Ve create the world from Ymir, existed before the world, like the little trinkets from their little kid, the playground my kids built don't really, he puts the ring on and kind of laughs and, oh yeah, here, have it back. That's gonna be funny. Like, like none of the things, it's like you're walking into your grandkids' playground, like, oh, that's cute. Yeah. Neat. And just goes on about his merry way, like none of this really even bothers him. He's just basically checking on his grandkids or something. So I've always speculated that because it doesn't, they call Buri the father of the gods, but this is Bestla's side. So then did Bestla's side die when the other giants drown? I don't know.
Yeah.
And if so, like Rachel was saying, is he in the personal inside? Like, so now he's talking to his ancestors, even though they aren't alive. All these interactions are not necessarily happening in the physical realm.
Yeah.
Which is going to happen after not eating or drinking for 9 days. And
Yeah,
bleeding
go
and
somewhere.
hanging there. Yeah. Yeah, your mind might not be in the physical realm anymore. So that would definitely seem where that probably is happening is in the non-physical realm at that point. And he is seeing his ancestors.
And then it's even more unclear how he gets down from the tree.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's such a good riddle, because if he's a sacrifice to himself on the tree, then he was both on the tree and not on the tree. How do you get down from yourself? How do you do that? I began to be fruitful and became wise. And he starts talking about the words he's speaking and the deeds that he's doing and the runes that he's making.
Well, let's get it.
Let's see. Oh yeah, and he's okay. It is interesting. This was just reread during Twilight Reading Hour. She was talking about the runes and the different kinds and who they're for. Here we were talking about the different kinds of wood. So it is interesting that Odin carved some for the gods, and then Dane carved some for the elves, Dvalin for the dwarves, and Astrid for the giants, and I carved some for myself. So it's like you were saying, with the etheric being above that center, it's like there are runes. When you look on that tree, there are runes for each of these different beings, essentially.
Yep. Yep, exactly. Let's go ahead with 141.
Let's see here. Oh yeah, well, we read this one. Did you read that one on your side?
I don't think I did. Then began I to grow and gain in insight, to wax eke in wisdom. One verse led on to another verse. One poem led on to the other poem. And so it really seems like he was basically almost like where they say that a good writer is almost channeling the information, that almost, what he would, it almost seems the same type of thing in this situation, what he's talking about. Like, obviously he's not reading a book. He began to grow, to wax, as in like waxing moon, getting fuller, waning moon, getting slimmer. He's waxing in wisdom. One verse led on to another verse, one poem to another. So these are things that apparently he is experiencing, wisdoms that are just flowing out of him. He's in the flow state.
And then did you do 42 or 43?
1, 2, 3, 4. Man, I did 3. I was not even counting 5. Like, apparently I do not know how to count today. Runes will thou find and rightly read, of wondrous weight, of mighty magic, which that died, the dread God, which that made the holy hosts and were etched by Odin. And so in mine, it does have a subnote for the dyed, and that is with blood, which is thought especially potent in magic.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that as well.
Yeah, that's the way that I've always heard that. That's the only way you can tie the runes to yourself, and which 100% makes sense. Your blood is what's carrying your salts, your entire bloodline. That's your salts and your mercury. And then on top of that, most people will then take and bury their runes in the root area of a tree for a month after blooding them, and let them retie with the earth and make a connection between you and the roots of the tree through the runes. And so there's a real nice mechanical thought process behind that. So this is the part where Odin, he's already received the runes. Now he's etching these runes, and this is basically how Midgard receives them. So if you think about it, Odin at the time of this sacrifice, and this is something I talk about quite a bit, where the sacrifice of himself to himself is an ego death. That is the ego death where he is separating his high mind and his low mind and then trying to put them back together. He's already activated this high and low, and now he needs to make this permanent. And from this position now, he's bringing the runes from below into Midgard. And obviously this is something Odin gifted to us, so this wasn't something we had access to at this point in time. We just didn't. And so now Odin's gifting us with the wisdom of the universe, because high thought is one thing, like when we were talking about with the spiritual structure where the dense beings don't have high thought, is one thing. But if you haven't done that high thought, it may or may not work out, and it may or may not work out how you wanted it to. So once that high thought has been done, experienced, and went through the process, now we're talking about wisdom. And so this is two different things, where runes are more on the wisdom side, not the high thought. This is the experiences of your ancestry, of your culture, of your people. So this is more of the wisdom side. He had to pull that from the root and bring it up.
Yeah. And I don't know, it's interesting. It's like, we talk about he did this and then gave it to us. Like, that's pretty generous for somebody to go through an experience and share that experience with you and share the wisdom and be willing to teach it and to see the value in more people knowing it. And to put it in letters is probably, I don't know, I think that's a really nice way to do it, honestly. Because then you're always going to be able to see it. You're going to communicate with it. You might not always see it because, history always paints it like, oh, there aren't any records. Well, there's only a few reasons why there's not records. Making paper is something you can do with all kinds of materials. So I don't believe that nobody was making paper around this time. If you put something in stone, yes, it will last a lot longer. Conquest is a thing. Records can be destroyed. Carving runes for yourself, it's going to be personal. If you have a set of these runes that are carved from the roots, or I think that's probably why some people thinking about it, have they always been round? Would you cut the roots like you would a carrot? Or are you going to use the roots long ways and throw them like sticks? or staves,
Mm.
and those things biodegrade, but that's part of the process too. So, it's interesting. But if you understand them, then they are always with you. And if you teach them, then they will be there, no matter what you make them out of. So it's interesting that there are people who, they're like, well, do you really believe Odin went and got all these? And it's like, well, why not? Somebody who created language went through something. I mean, there's so many different languages that do the same thing, where every single letter means something. Chinese, Hebrew, like it is not, it's ridiculous. There's so much deep meaning. Try to read a sentence and interpret every single letter as you go along, and you're going to find another layer. So, to say that it wasn't somebody who saw this truth, I don't see why it wouldn't have been. Somebody who's like, oh, here's some symbols that make sense, and I'm going to share them with you, and we can communicate, and we can keep a record of this truth and relearn it over and over.
Absolutely. Plus the elegance. Can you imagine how tough it is to make up your own alphabet? Mario was talking about this, saying that there's supposedly a theory that in some magic school that everybody had to make up their own alphabet. And I'm sitting there and imagining it, and I can imagine making up your own language, because literally you're just in the simplicity of it, you're just like any little kid making up words for things that you're seeing that, and I mean, you could get a little bit more technical with it and say this sound means this. And so all the things that are white, anything that I see that has white in it, it makes this sound or whatever. And you could get fairly intelligent, but to make your own alphabet, like you're just totally, I don't even know where I would start with that, to be honest with you.
I think I tried as a kid because I liked it. But like, that's the thing, like talking about this now, it's like, it has to be an image that other people are also going to go, oh, hey, yeah. Oh, that sound. I see that sound in that image. That's why hieroglyphs work. That's why, we look at A, we know exactly how that sounds. And why sometimes I spell things incorrectly on purpose. It looks better. It sounds better. It feels better. So there is something very real about language and making it up. It's not just a thing somebody does willy-nilly. And for other people to accept it, that's a huge thing too. Because you could completely refuse. Like, I am not writing that. I'm not going to write that. It's too many. No, not doing it.
You end up with the Fifth Element. There's an actual language that chick from the Fifth Element is speaking, an actual real invented language that they made up just for the show, and like 4 people in the world know it.
Yeah, people do stuff like that. It's crazy. It's wild.
Or you end up with like Klingon.
Well, Alpha.
There's a bunch of people.
I think for the movie Alpha, which is like kind of Clan of the Cave Bear time period, but they reconstructed ancient French in a sense, or close to what they figured it could have been.
Huh.
So yeah.
I'll be damned.
Who knew?
Which once again, it's just like no different than the whole reconstruction of like the heathen, the Norse, and all that. Like they're like, yeah, this, and I like how they've definitively come up with things. It's like, that's no different than like the people who claim there was dinosaurs and the dinosaur made this noise. Like nobody in living history has heard this noise made. Like you don't know.
Yeah, it's a good guess. Good guess though. Sounds great.
Yeah. Interesting guess, but no. Horrible. All right. So now I think I've actually got through all of them.
43.
You're at 43 also?
Uh-huh.
Wow. I was so deep in thought while you were talking about this each time, because you kept saying different things. Like 140 is where I really got caught. I don't know why I really got caught in thought on that one.
I think you're right.
Odin.
We did 6 in 1 hour.
I knew it when, as soon as I forgot where we were, and as soon as you started reading that, I'm like, oh yeah, totally gonna fly right through this part. Sure. Odin among the Aesir, for elves Dane, Dvalin for the dwarves, Elsvis among Ettins, but for the earthborn men wrought I some myself. And so, again, this is Lord of the Rings, obviously. The dwarves got some, the elves got some, the humans got some. Same basic story right there. So basically, when you're looking at it, you've got Elfheim and Svartalfheim, where that's always very interesting, because there's a lot of people that say there was no dwarves, and so there would have been just Elfheim and Svartalfheim, and Svartalf just means dark elf, which just would mean the root side. And so basically that's what we're talking about. We got some runes on the etheric side, the upper side, some runes on the dense root side, and then Odin for earthborn men, Midgard. Odin brought the runes. He gifted them to us, said, here guys, have some runes.
I think it goes into that as above, so below stuff, where there's like here's our representation and our emanation, and because the truth goes both ways, there is an emanation that understands the truth here, and here at these points. So that's why there are different names. It's not that Odin is Dane or Dvalin or Asvid in different forms. I mean, if we're all one, then sure, you could say that. You could say it's him in different forms. That's Dane is his elf self, but it is distinct. I kind of think that's cool.
It is very distinct. See, and then actually what we have is 5 sets when you really look at it, because Odin among the Aesir. So the Aesir have a set, which the Aesir are one level above us, the way I understand it, because I don't see the tree so much the way they kind of portray it. A lot of people try putting Asgard as like the highest, and that's not the way that is at all interpreted. I don't even understand where that interpretation could have come from. But Asgard, and I think this is part of why we're able to interact with that level so much, is the level just above us. And then for the elves, Dane. So this is above that, but not the extreme high level. Dvalin for the dwarves. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And Elsvith among the Etten. But for earthborn men, I wrought some myself. So that's 5 different, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different levels of understanding and consciousness.
That makes sense.
Which still would not include Surt and the Niflheim. So this would not include that. This is when Odin, and this is when you're looking at my tree of life, when I say that the root, or when I'm showing the way that works and you're going up, this is why I'm talking about you need to open that high mind. And that's where Odin actually, his eye was actually opening up this high mind. And then that high oil's job is to open up the low salt. And so for me, that's why at Mimir as well, he had to throw that eye down to open up that lowest salt, and then he goes through the trial of Yggdrasil, because now that he's got all these components open, now he's got to go through the alchemical marriage.
Yeah, and it doesn't even just hit us or humans. This affects everybody else.
Yeah.
Is this knowledge, which is kind of what this last one is talking about. You know, it's like they all carved runes. Everybody's on the same page now, up and down, or all around. Like, it's pretty cool.
100%. And this is also, when you look at the tree of life, this is why at the top there's an eagle, and you can't go above that eagle. This is what we're talking about. There's only certain access, because even Odin isn't Surt. So, you know, when Surt comes and the armies of Nephilim, everybody goes, shit, you know, because they're all in between that level. And so now those are the big dogs. The big dog high and the big dog low have showed up. But what this is the area in between. The Vesca Pisces that we live in is what we're talking about. And then on the low side, there's the Needhog dragon. And you see that same representation in a lot of different cultures. But with that, we got through a whopping 5. We'll see how far we get in the second half. Rachel, please tell everybody where they can find you now that Rachel's starting to bless us with her presence and her wisdom again.
Thank you. I can still be found on Telegram through the Sunforge and my group Refinery, where I host Twilight Reading Hour. And I am picking up again on Odyssey through Local Goddess, reading through Women Who Run with Wolves right now. Excellent book if you haven't read it. Highly recommended for ladies. Gentlemen, if you feel so inclined, it's definitely a good read. I will be on Spiders at some point. I've taken quite a break, but I'll pop in here and there.
Well, hopefully we're cool again enough.
Yeah. You're cool. It's okay.
At least I am.
Yeah.
With that, everybody come on over to the Rokfin side and get the rest of the conversation. We always put the full 2-hour conversation on Rokfin, where we have mostly free speech, as opposed to other places. Rokfin's actually never harassed us at all. So come on over to Rokfin. It's completely free to come watch the show. Completely free to sign up, leave some comments if you want. And you can join the premiums if you want. The $5 just gets you access to my channel, which doesn't have any premium on it. So I'm not going to lie. That's probably it's if you're donating. And to be honest, if you want to donate like that, just do it on Cash App or PayPal. Jared can put them up or whatever. There's just really no reason to do that. If you want to do the 15, you get access to everybody's stuff. Was kind of nice at just the $9.99 and just one easy thing, but whatever. But with that, night to everybody on YouTube and all the podcasts. We'll see you on the Rokfin side. Love you guys.